It's the end of the month of August. Season 7 of Debt Free in 30 starts next week, so today is the last of the best of rebroadcast of episodes from season number 6. Most people listen to the audio version of the Debt Free in 30 podcast, available on all podcasting apps as opposed to watching it on YouTube, but this episode had a higher than normal number of video downloads on YouTube, so obviously it struck a nerve. First aired in May, the title of this episode is Debt Forgiveness, Is a Debt Jubilee the Answer? And yes, it was recorded about 2 months into the great coronavirus pandemic of 2020, so I had longer hair and a gray beard, but that's not the point. I think it was timely then, and even more timely now, as we enter the fall of 2020, and hopefully the number of COVID-19 cases here in Ontario and around the world continues to drop, although obviously everyone is worried about what will happen with back to school in September, so the future is still very uncertain. And that's the point of today's episode. The future is uncertain, but there's one thing we know for sure, and that is that Canadians are still carrying a huge amount of debt. At the moment, the pressure is off. Many mortgages, car loans, and even credit cards are in deferral periods. The courts are only gradually reopening, so there aren't many collection lawsuits happening, and Canada Revenue Agency has not yet resumed collection activity. So if your creditors aren't calling and threatening to garnish your wages, you don't need to rush out to seek bankruptcy protection. But there is still the problem of all that debt. What happens when the deferral periods end, which is happening soon? CERB has been extended to the end of September, and the federal government has announced that EI benefits will be extended, so the pressure may not be that great for a few more months. But what happens in the future? What happens in April of 2021 when the over 8 million people who received CERB file their taxes and find out that they owe taxes? At the time of this recording at the end of August, and this could change, the maximum CERB payout is $500 per week for 28 weeks or $14,000. So if you're in the 20% tax bracket, you could have an additional tax liability for 2020 of $2,800. Of course, if your tax rate is higher or lower, your liability will be different. So what will happen if 8 million people, many of whom are used to getting a tax refund, end up owing money in taxes? And it's not just taxes. What about all of the other debt that's still owing and that the collectors will start collecting once the deferral period end and the economy opens up? That's where the idea comes in for a debt jubilee. If there's no hope for people to pay off their debt, could the government just wipe it out? Well, that's never happened in Canada, but there are some ancient historical precedents, as I discuss in this episode. But what about Canada? The U.S. presidential election is in November, and there's a very good chance that we'll have a federal election in Canada at some point in the next year. So politicians will be tempted to do something to mitigate the impact of all of this debt. What will they do? I don't know, probably nothing, because it would be very difficult politically to give people with debt a break and not give a break to people who don't have debt. But here's a thought. Perhaps the government will realize that the CERB tax liability is a huge contingent liability, so how hard would it be for them to say, we're going to make one final CERB payment to everyone who got CERB equal to 20% of what you got in CERB, but we won't give you the cash, we'll apply it to your tax liability for 2020. Well, that'd significantly reduce the problem. Or they could also retroactively declare that CERB isn't taxable. That also makes the problem go away. What are these policies an example of? Well, sort of. They're a debt jubilee. Not in the conventional sense, but it is a form of debt forgiveness. So what is a debt jubilee? How has it worked in the past? And do I think it's a good option? Well, I'll be back next week with an all-new episode, the season number 7 season premiere of Debt Free in 30. But for now, please enjoy this special rebroadcast of Debt Free in 30, originally aired as episode number 297 in May 2019. Debt forgiveness, is debt jubilee the answer?